Joe, Carol gave us a little overview. This news sending shares of some of these rare earth companies higher, even higher today. What do we know about the president's plans? What does he hope to accomplish here?
So what we know right now is that they're launching a $12 billion fund of sorts to allow for something called Project Vault to purchase critical minerals to put into a strategic stockpile that is specifically available to U.S. private companies. The idea here is we've had a national defense stockpile on critical minerals, rare earths, held by the Pentagon for decades, and we use that for obvious concerns of the case that a massive war breaks out and that suddenly we'd be cut off from supplies abroad. But there hasn't been anything specific to private companies. And one of the reasons we're getting here is because we obviously had a long discussion about export controls for the past year that China in particular put on a number of rare earths. And I think that was the kind of question that has started to enter the mindset of the administration and why we're looking at a project like this now.
Hey, Joe, is this kind of akin to something like the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? Yeah. Okay, it is. And I want.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But not like the strategic
I
Bitcoin
think,
reserve, truly.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Well,
I think the critics would out there say, hey, there's no use. We can use the SPR. We can use critical minerals, but we can't use Bitcoin. And that's a serious issue.
Listen, I think on some level, this is the way that folks at the White House have been looking around it, which is that you have the equivalent in critical minerals of the SPR.
Okay, got it. So how long will it take for this to build? And I also want to go and we've talked with you a lot about this, about, U.S. government investments in various companies, critical minerals and the like. And I do wonder for an investing audience who's listening and watching right now, does that mean basically the U.S. is saying, we're going to support you guys, at least in this administration?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have this seed money, right? There's about 1.6 billion that's private capital alongside this 10 billion that's going to be from a loan from the Export-Import Bank in the United States. And we've seen some of this before, right? Where it's like you see that there's private money that comes in alongside federal money. The idea being that, okay, if the federal government is sitting here and backing a project, then it makes sense for private investors to say, okay, it's worth it for us to come in too. I think one of your questions was like, how long is this going to take?
Yeah.
As I understand it, right out of the gates, they intend to start purchasing critical minerals. How does that happen? Well, an important part of this is the administration is apparently in this initiative already signed up more than a dozen OEMs, right? Just like actual consumers of critical minerals. You have Stellantis, Boeing, GM, or some other ones we've reported that have already have been brought onto this partnership. Presumably, they will be the ones indicating to the vault, here are the critical minerals that our industries need, right? So automotive or aerospace or other industrial sectors. And then they take the direction from industry of what they should have in this stockpile and begin to go out and buy. So how long does all that buying take? It's a great question. I don't know. I think that's a detail that we're going to have to get from the administration. I've heard the idea that there's not too much a concern that they can go out and actually spend a lot of this 12 billion very quickly to build up this stockpile as quickly as possible. But again, things sound easier than they actually are when you have to actually go out into the market and start acquiring these materials.
Acquire them. Do they acquire them as raw materials or do they acquire them as processed materials, Joe? Because the processing is something you talk to us a lot about. And given that is capacity in some of these cases to process these is absolutely dominated by China, how does the U.S. even fill the vault?
Tim, that's a great question. As we understand it, it is critical minerals, which could mean anything on the critical minerals list as deemed by the United States Geological Survey. So rare earths are on there, copper's on there, a number of other major metals are on there. What I think one of the things the market does need to understand is are we talking about raw ore? Are we talking about concentrates? Are we talking about refined metal? And then, listen, people are even asking wait, will this eventually include derivative products? Our reporting right now says that it is strictly to critical minerals, but these are things that the market's going to have to find out from the administration.
Can we assume that this is not just a Trump administration thing? Can we assume that this emphasis on whatever is set up today is going to continue into whoever is in the White House following Donald Trump?
Carol, I mean, you're asking a question that goes beyond a question that should be asked of just this strategic stockpile, right? It should go to the equity investments and the grants and the loans being given out to companies and everything else that the United States federal government's gotten its hand into. And this is a conversation I have every week with people asking, well, what does all of this mean when Donald Trump leaves office? And I mean, I don't have an answer. And I don't think even the smartest people who are on the inside of all these things truly can give a firm response on what that means.
Joe, go ahead, to follow though, because I think about this in terms of the investment play that might be here, right? Like even you saw it with Venezuela, right? The oil company CEO saying, maybe not so fast. Like there are a lot of issues, and I understand your emphasis while you're in the White House, but again, not so fast because there are some really big problems to be solved. And I wonder if that's the same case, or is this the U.S. starting to follow the China playbook, which might be necessary?
On some level, yes, it is the U.S. following a China-like playbook. And to answer the other part of your question is like the conversations I'm having with people about whether this continues after the Trump administration. I'm talking about people I'm talking to in the markets, investors, companies, right? Like on the buy side, not the government side. They are the ones who have real skin in the game. They have obvious reasons to care about this. And I think it's still not clear to them like what this all means 3 years from now. Yeah. On the other hand, it is a good signal that the government is in this. That is, at the very least, a bit of a calming part of this whole thing.
Joe, you make the point in the piece that the U.S. already has this national stockpile of critical minerals for the nation's defense industrial base. Do we know anything beyond that? What's in it? How much is in it?
Yeah, the Pentagon actually puts out information, not all the time, but a general idea of what is in their stockpile. They also note the kind of things that they feel like they have to have in their stockpile. The Defense Logistics Agency, which oversees the stockpile, got a massive boost from the big, beautiful bill of the money it can use to go out and procure these elements, these minerals that they've been short on for a number of years. And we've even seen in the Federal Register kind of the calls they put out to the market to purchase various materials. I mean, we reported on a big buy they wanted to do of cobalt from the open market. So it's not like a black box. Like we do have the ability to see what it is that they need. Right. And also like in a practical way, like we kind of have an idea just from open markets, like what it is industries and defense need that are in either short supply or technically like a single source, right? Like the rare earths have been a very obvious one. Like we know that both from the market and, from what we're hearing from the administration.